Good morning everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we're diving into a fascinating, yet often overlooked piece of military history. We're going to explore the story of the very first bullet used by the United States military. We'll answer three simple but important questions. Which bullet was it? When did it appear? And who made it? To really get into this, we first need to understand how early firearms worked, because what we call a bullet today is very different from what a soldier would have recognized back then. So, what was an early bullet? When you and I hear the word, we picture a modern cartridge, a metal projectile seated inside a brass case, complete with gunpowder and a primer at the base. It's a self-contained unit. But in the 18th century, things were much simpler and a lot more. There were no cartridges, no primers, and no shiny brass cases. A bullet was just that, the projectile itself, and in those days it was simply a round ball of lead. So, the very first bullet used by the US military was a round lead ball, more commonly known as a musket ball. Now let's get specific. The official first bullet used by the United States military was the round lead musket ball. Its story begins around 1775, right at the start of the American Revolutionary War, and its use continued well into the early 1800s. This was the era of the Continental Army, formed under the command of General George Washington. The muskets they carried, like the famous French Charleville Musket or early American-made muskets, were all designed to fire these simple lead balls. Even the later Springfield Model 1795, one of the first standardized American military firearms, used this same type of ammunition. So who was making these crucial pieces of military hardware? You might expect a big company or a famous inventor, but the reality was much more decentralized. There wasn't a single factory churning out bullets. Instead, they were produced by a network of colonial gunsmiths, local foundries, and even within military camps by the soldiers themselves. It was common for soldiers to be issued bullet molds and bars of lead. They would melt the lead over a fire and pour it into the molds to cast their own ammunition. So, the simple answer is, the first US military bullet was made by American craftsmen and the soldiers who would fire them. It was a truly local, grassroots effort. Why was lead the metal of choice? There are a few key reasons. First, lead has a relatively low melting point, making it easy to melt and cast into shape even with a simple campfire. It was also widely available and relatively inexpensive in the colonies. Lastly, lead is a soft, malleable metal. This softness allowed the ball to be rammed down the barrel without damaging the gun and to expand slightly upon firing, creating a better seal for the expanding gases. These properties made it the perfect material for early firearms. Let's talk about size. The caliber of these musket balls varied depending on the firearm. The French Charleville, favored by the Continental Army, used a 69 caliber ball. In contrast, the British Brown Bess musket, their main opponent, fired a larger 75 caliber ball. These were pure lead spheres, to improve the fit inside the musket's barrel and to hold the gunpowder. The ball was often wrapped in a small piece of paper or cloth before being loaded. This wrapping was part of a paper cartridge that also held a pre-measured powder charge. How did this work in the heat of battle? The loading process was a drill every soldier had to master. A soldier would bite open the paper cartridge, pour a little powder into the pan of the flintlock mechanism, and then pour the rest of the powder down the musket's barrel. Next, they would insert the lead ball, still wrapped in its paper, and use a long ramrod to push it all the way down until it was seated firmly against the powder. The process was slow, and the accuracy of these smooth-bore muskets was notoriously poor, but they weren't designed for sniping. The strategy was massed volleys, hundreds of men firing at once to create a devastating wall of lead. This system defined warfare for over a century. Of course, the round lead ball was far from perfect. Its limitations were significant. The spherical shape was not aerodynamic, causing it to lose speed and energy very quickly. This resulted in poor accuracy and a very short effective range, maybe 75 to 100 yards at best. Beyond that, hitting a specific target was more a matter of luck than skill. These clear disadvantages pushed inventors and military leaders to search for something better. This search for improvement led to a gradual transition toward modern bullets. Over the next few decades, the US military began experimenting with new designs. They explored elongated, conical-shaped bullets, which offered better aerodynamics. They also adopted rifled barrels with spiral grooves cut inside, which spun the bullet for greater stability and accuracy. This evolution culminated in revolutionary designs like the mini ball and the E-10 Barbie-Sisher-S bullet that dramatically increased the range and accuracy of military rifles. This in turn led to the development of self-contained cartridges and the ammunition we know today. But it all started with that simple lead ball. The historical importance of the first US military bullet can't be overstated. This humble piece of lead represents the birth of American warfare and the nation's fight for independence from Britain. It marks the beginning of a long journey toward military standardization and technological innovation. It is the very foundation upon which all of America's modern ammunition technology is built. So, to wrap it all up, the first bullet used by the US military was the simple round lead musket ball. It appeared around 1775 during the American Revolution and was made not by large factories but by local craftsmen and the soldiers themselves. Though limited by today's standards, this small piece of lead played a massive role in winning a war and shaping the history of the United States. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more deep dives into history. We'll see you in the next video.